All right. If you haven't done one of these before, my name is Sarah Torbert, and my job is to serve as the state volunteer specialist for Wyoming, which basically means that I get to do a lot of the background checks and then also trainings that go with um, being a volunteer. And so every year I ask both volunteers and our staff for some topics that they think are important to the 4-H program. And that's kind of where the topics that we're going to go through come from. So today's topic is appreciation recognition. Feel free to turn your mic on if you'd like to talk, or you can always use the chat box. I'll try to check it pretty regularly to see if there's anything that you want to share with us or that anything you have questions about. It's a pretty low-key training. I tend to do most of the talking just because of our format, but I love to hear your ideas and suggestions or anything that you want to share with the group. So with that, I'm going to get started. Our topic this evening is appreciation and recognition. So hopefully you've had a chance to write your name in the chat box. If not, please take some time to do that. Otherwise, I tend to not be able to get all of the people some credit, but I go through the chat box at the end and make sure I got everybody. So why is this topic important? I mean, I think that's a really good question. Obviously, enough of you are here tonight that think it's important, but there's some background as to why we think this is important in the 4-H program. So really everybody in some way desires to be recognized, whether you think it's not important to you or not. I think it's always fun when you get that letter from a 4-H member that says thank you, or sometimes for me, it's even an email or a phone call to say, hey, I really enjoyed this, or I used this thing that you were teaching about. I think everybody likes to know that they're doing something that's productive and helping other people. Positive recognition also brings up positive attitudes. So if we're going to expect our young people to be excited and engaged in the 4-H program, it's probably going to be much more likely to happen if they have a positive example to follow. Youth become active in 4-H because they benefit from it personally, not because they see the big picture of the program. As volunteers and parents, you may see the big picture of the program. You may have an understanding as to why youth are involved in 4-H, but seldom they don't understand that they're involved in it for life skill development or to become a better person. They like it because they get rewarded, they get recognized for different things that they do. So for them, that recognition really makes them see the benefits they're getting from 4-H. Recognition can also be a motivator for youth and adults. And I think we can think about the fact, like if you tell another volunteer or parent, I really appreciate you bringing a healthy snack to our meeting, they're much more likely to volunteer for you later and be motivated to help out than if you ignore them and don't say anything to them. I also think when we get positive reinforcement that then we could take risks or try to do even better because somebody thinks that we did something well. All right, and then recognition also provides youth and adults with feedback. So, maybe I'll get some recognition after this that says, this was really great. However, I just wish you would have talked slower or you would have said something different. And so that way it helps me understand that you liked it, but maybe there's some opportunities for me to be able to improve on the things that I'm doing. So let's get into the nitty gritty of this. So what are the basic beliefs about recognition related to 4-H? When we recognize young people in 4-H, we need to figure out how to make sure it's both intrinsic and extrinsic, which means makes me feel good about myself and it's outwardly shown to other people so that I have some self-worth, but also other people see that I get my awards because that's an important aspect of it too. Everyone needs to be recognized at some time for their efforts. So this shouldn't just be that grand champion kid. That should be the kid that just shows up to our meetings because they literally know nothing about 4-H and they want to get involved. So we have to be really careful to make sure that it's not just one person, that it's the entire group, parents, volunteers, everybody. Recognition is more meaningful when it occurs after it's earned. If I wrote, I know I saw Kim Fry was on here. If I wrote her a letter that said, hey, Kim, I'm so proud of you for that award that you got 3 years ago, she's probably going to be wondering why the heck I'm writing to her and maybe what's going on because I really waited way too long to be able to reward her. So you want to make sure it happens right when it occurs rather than 2 or 3 years later. And you want it to be, or even 2 or 3 months later, you want it to be specific. Like, I really appreciated that you did this for me or for our group. Appropriate recognition for an individual varies depending on their age, past experience, family lifestyle. What you're going to give to an 8-year-old as recognition might be much different than what you'll give to a volunteer, an 18-year-old, maybe a community member that's a donor. So you just have to really think about what kind of things are going to be valued by different people. It's also more important when it's giving by someone close. So if you have a awards banquet and you're recognizing your friend of 4-H and it happens to be a neighbor of one of your 4-H members, it's going to be much more meaningful if that little 4-H member gets up there and talks about the person than it is if you, who don't really even know the person, give the award. If it can be very meaningful, it's going to mean more to that person. And also we need to understand that competition and recognition for competition isn't for everyone. So we need to allow individuals to have a choice in how they participate to be recognized. For some of us, my kids, they love to thrive in the show ring. For some kids, that means absolutely nothing, and they're just happy to be feeding their pig at home. And so we really need to think about the different levels of recognition and what they mean to different kids. All right, don't forget, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to add those in the chat box. So what does this mean for us? It means not everyone will win a grand champion. Not everyone will win volunteer of the year. Not everyone gets to be president of their 4-H club, or any other award you can fill in the blank. But everyone needs, but everyone needs something. It doesn't have to be the biggest or best award at all, but everybody needs something to feel like they're part of the group and that they're important. So we're going to look at the different levels of recognition in order to make sure that we can easily make that happen within the 4-H program. So if you haven't seen this already, I did a presentation a couple years ago on the recognition model. It was more geared towards record books, but I think that this is kind of the model that really helps us to create those different levels of recognition depending on what a child is looking for. So we're going to go through each one of these tonight and kind of talk about what they look like and how they can happen in the 4-H program and easy ways that you can implement them into what you're doing. So there's participation, progress towards a set of goals, cooperation, peer competition, and standard of excellence. So I'm guessing the one that we're all the most familiar with is this idea of peer competition. So getting in the show ring and you got a winner, a loser, showing in fashion review, you got a first and second place, whatever, doing a demonstration contest, somebody's the grand champion, someone's the reserve, something where you're actually giving a winner and then possibly other people don't win, they lose. It's a bad word sometimes, but it happens. So we have winners and losers when we have peer competition. Young people get first, second, third, fourth, all the way down until last place, depending on how many awards you give. Or like in our case, livestock judging is like this, and we give first through fifth place awards for individuals. For some youth, this is super motivating and they want to exceed and beat their friends or be the best. And so for some, you can use this to get them to engage. For some youth, this means nothing. And so I think we need to really think about that. There's some risk involved with this, and so we need to make it optional. And so that's where I talked a little bit about the fact that some kids don't necessarily thrive on this, so we need to think of other ways that they can choose to participate. A lot of times the leader and parent attitude determines the intensity of the competition, and how many of you, I can relate to this. My husband is super competitive, and because of what I do for a living, I try not to be the competitive one, although I do have a pretty competitive edge. But I think how we present to our kids not winning when they walk out of some type of competition is really going to determine how upset or how they're going to handle the winner and loser concept. And for those of you who have Clover Buds in your program, research shows that it's really not an appropriate kind of competition for youth under 8, which is why we wait until they're a regular 4-H member to engage them in peer-to-peer competition. We want Clover Buds to have experiences, but we want to keep that peer-to-peer competition because of the risk that comes with it. Even though we don't always see the risk up front, it's underlying sometimes. We want to keep that to a minimum. So I've kind of alluded to it, but if you can use the chat box to maybe give us some examples of where you think you would find peer competition in, I saw there's someone from Iowa here too, so in the 4-H program that you're part of. So if you want to just take a quick second to jot down where you see peer-to-peer competition in the 4-H program. And while you do that, I'm going to try to make sure I write down some more names here. Someone said they see it in horse shows. That's an excellent example. Most of our horse shows give first, second, third place. They don't necessarily allow everybody to get that blue ribbon. Nothing wrong with peer competition, just something that we need to be aware of. Jackpot shows, Even our county fair, for the most part, you're going to have a grand champion and a reserve within the ring. So the risk, Kim asked me to explain the risk for underage competition. Part of that is a developmental concept. We have to think about where those kids are as far as what they can process through of becoming, of seeing themselves as a failure or a success person. So in turn, if that 5-year-old doesn't win, they may be driven by competition, but because of their developmental state, they haven't quite understood that they don't place value on, shouldn't place value on themselves based on winning or losing. And I don't know that an 8-year-old can either, but developmentally their brains are more advanced where they actually are getting to the point where they can understand that the ribbon they're getting or the place they're getting doesn't necessarily mean that they are a good or bad person. And so a lot of it comes with the risk is going to be developmental as far as placing value or worth on themselves based on where they're placing, which is why it's really great to offer other kinds of competition in them, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Okay. So great example, showmanship at county fair. Anything where there's going to be a first, second, third place is going to be where you find peer competition. And even if you think about your indoor exhibits, which aren't normally peer competition, they're a different type of competition. We even give grand champions and champions there. So there is some type of peer competition that can be seen when you do indoor judging also. So here's some examples of things that you just talked about. Well, what does it look like? What kind of things might you get if you're going to get awarded for peer competition? So youth, volunteers, or families could get a plaque, a medal, a pin, a certificate, some type of tangible award for peer competition. So examples, you might get some of these things for the record books that you do, if you're the best in something, if you enter a contest, if you're showing animals. Scholarships are example of peer competition because we can't award everybody one. Some counties or clubs might have a volunteer of the year, a family of the year, or a club of the year. So that's where one person or two people are getting awarded and everybody else is getting either not awarded or something lesser than that top person. So the next kind of competition is progress towards set goals. So this is basically for every single person that's in 4-H, you can have them work to achieve this type of competition. So youth, parents, families, volunteers, you can all set goals. This isn't just for members. So as a volunteer, you may have a goal that you're going to host at least 6 meetings a year, or that you're going to meet with at least 3 kids. So what we need to do is help young people set goals too, and those goals need to be attainable. So winning grand champion at the county fair may not be an attainable goal because we have zero ability to choose who the judge is and how they're going to pick that day. However, you know, being able to control my lamb in the ring and not lose it to be a better showman would be a much better example of how you want to set that goal. The other thing is once we set these goals, we need to, as 4-H clubs, parents, and leaders, check in on progress. So once a month, maybe you have a member state one of their goals and how they're doing on it. Or during your 4-H project meetings, you have members come have their goals listed and they can say, oh, this is what I did towards that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a long-term thing where you spend tons of time at your meeting doing it, but checking on them is going to help kids actually, or parents or adults actually work towards achieving them. Maybe as a family, your goal is that you attend at least 5 meetings and do 2 community service projects. So there's different ways, or as a parent, that you at least are able to watch your kid at 3 different 4-H events. So recognition for the progress makes us happy. So maybe your family goal is to attend 50% of your 4-H club meetings. And so you then, as a family, realize that you've made it to half your meetings and you decide to take everybody out for ice cream because you did something well, or everybody gets to do a high five or you do a family hug. I know it sounds kind of silly, but I think it's important for young people to understand that it's important to recognize when we're doing something well in our life. So it makes us feel good about our progress, and then we can continue. So examples of this might be positive feedback, pin certificates, handwritten notes, and we'll cover a few more in the next slide. So if you think about progress towards setting goals, where might you see this in the 4-H program? Any ideas? You can write them in the chat box. Right. So record books, we set goals and we work to achieve them. So that's a great example of those. Project work, this is something you can really work on if you're leading a project or if your child is in a project. Sit with them right now is a great time because we're just getting started in a lot of them, and set a goal, and then every month look back and see how things are going. And if you want to reward or recognize that progress, some things you can do are listed here. You can have positive feedback like, that's really awesome, John. I'm really impressed that you've been able to do those things. Or I really like that you are out every day feeding your animal because that really shows that you're dedicated to your project. So just giving them those kudos, a high five, anything like that can mean a lot to a kid. I also think you could even hold a club picnic. If everybody reaches 50% of their goals, well, our club is going to have a picnic that everybody can come to, or an event, or a public reception or even a club meeting where you recognize how everybody's done towards their goals. You can put their names in a newspaper, a bulletin board, even a family refrigerator certificate where you can put it up or see their progress. As a leader, you can send them, the member or their parents, a letter telling them how proud you are of them. Create some basic certificates to hand out. You can even have a member write a letter to a leader congratulating them on reaching their goals. Because I'm guessing if you share this, everybody's going to kind of know what's going on. Have a show and tell for your club or community where you show how you progress towards your goals or things you've been working on. And of course, you can always do a tangible award. Like if you met your goal for sewing, you could give that member new fabric, or parents could put that together where they would choose to buy something for their young person. I think the interesting thing here is that so often we focus on those tangible awards and giving kids stuff. It doesn't have to be that. It can be as simple as saying something like, that's really awesome that you did that. But we have to be really intentional about making that happen versus just kind of ignoring it and moving over it. And how often do we just kind of forget that we set those goals? And then when it's time to write our record book, then we go back and be like, oh, yeah, I probably did that, but we don't have any record of it. So really being intentional at meetings about meeting goals is a great way to recognize our 4-H members, and an easy way because everybody can work to achieve their goals. So the next one is the achieving a standard of excellence. And so in this type of reward system or recognition, youth are compared to a standard. Awards are usually red, blue, white. There's no ranking of the individual projects. So you didn't get first, second, third, or fourth. You all got blues. This group got reds. Another group got whites. Sometimes here, I think it's purple, blue, red, and white, depending on your county fair. Sometimes the standards are written. Those were probably much more applicable, I would say 20 or 30 years ago when some of us might have been in 4-H, that you had written standards. Now the world of 4-H has become so diverse in what we're bringing to the table at fair time or during project time that it's really hard to have standards, but those still exist in some projects. So can anybody tell me where the most prevalent way of achieving standards of excellence is seen in the 4-H program? That idea of a grouping of purples, blues, reds, and whites. Yep, Jackie's got it. Definitely we see this in static projects. So we have an idea of what the ideal woodworking project could look like. And I always say that when I orientate judges, that they're judging based on the product they're presenting and the knowledge of the kids. And that's kind of how we choose to get that red, blue, white, purple, different classifications for those projects. When I was doing research for this presentation, I think Florida did a really good job kind of showing how that works. So I'm going to show you some slides. They did a judging class with mugs. So they're judging against a standard. The standard for the mugs is that they had to hold liquid, have sturdy construction, be visually pleasing, and has a handle. So if you were coming to the fair and it was a class of mugs or everybody was bringing their mug, a great way to think about how they would judge these is, do they meet certain criteria? And these don't even have to be written. You can kind of know that if you're like looking for a mug or the best shelf, you want something sturdy, something that looks nice, maybe something that's put together well. And in my case, when judging happens, also a kid that actually did the work and can tell you about it. So if you look at this, they kind of break it down. This mug A, it holds liquid, it's sturdy. It's maybe not quite visually pleasing, it's kind of messy, but it does have a handle. So based on this, they gave it a red ribbon because it didn't meet all of the standards. This one holds liquid, it's sturdy. Again, visually pleasing, you can see it has some stains on it. It's maybe not super pretty, so it doesn't necessarily get that visually pleasing, so it also gets a red ribbon. You move to this one, it meets all the criteria. It looks nice, it's sturdy, it has a handle, so there's a blue ribbon with that one. And this last one, this plastic one, it's not very sturdy and it doesn't have a handle, so it's not meeting any of these. Definitely one of these, it's not meeting the criteria at all, so it gets a white ribbon. So as you can see, based on judging on a standard, they're giving all the mugs different placings because of where they fall within that, that standard that they're looking for. So if you want to teach young people about standards, there's actually some judging classes that you can use that are already pre-made, or you can create your own. So a lot of times we associate judging with livestock or horses or wool, or trying to think of what else, meats within the state of Wyoming, but you can actually do judging classes for almost any project. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second, and I'm going to show you a place where you can find these super quick. If you've listened to me talk before, I'm pretty adamant about this site. So I just need to get out of my PowerPoint here so I can show you where that's at. All right. Okay. Share this. No, it's not. Yes, this is it. Okay. So the University of Missouri is actually a place where I used to work, and I only use this website because I know the stuff is there. But if you go to extension.missouri.edu and pick this projects and opportunities, it's going to give you a drop-down menu of the different projects that are offered in Missouri, which is great. But you can look at, I don't know why cake is under healthy living, but we'll just go there. But cake decorating, I know, has some great stuff. So if you want to introduce a project like cake decorating, or even the idea of judging classes, this would be a great way to do that. So if you look under resources for all levels, and this is available for almost all of their projects, so you don't have to pick cake decorating, you can pick something that's much more applicable to your club. Click view resources, it's going to have a list of all the resources available for whatever project it is. So I'm going down here and they have judging classes, cake color. So if you click on it, you could actually print this out for your 4-H club meeting. Hopefully, if you can't see my screen right now, you should see something that says judging classes, cake decorating. So let me know if that's not what you see. Okay, so basically you scroll down here, it's saying that this is the answer key, so don't show this. But if you go down here, this is the judging class. So it's saying that you're getting ready to bake a birthday cake for your mom and you want to add some color. So which type of color would be the best used for buttercream icing? Place the items listed below from best to worst. And so their standard that they're trying to meet is knowing that they're going to color buttercream icing. And so depending on which one they want to do, which one would they give the top rating to, and which one might also get a top rating, but you could even have them rank with, would this get a blue, a red, or a white, depending on how you want to do this. But basically then they give you the answers where it says D is first because it's actual cake decorating color mix, A is second because it's still cake decorating, but it's a spray on, C is third because it is markers and it'll take a long time, and B is last because it's not really made for icing. So they actually have these judging classes for tons of different projects. So it's a great way to introduce the idea of judging and ranking and meeting a standard of excellence to young people. You can also do pencils. That's one of my favorite ones to do. So you get a group of pencils together. I know it sounds crazy, but like here's a terrible, I don't think it's a terrible pencil, no eraser, it's not very sharp, but you can put 4 pencils together and people can work to judge pencils. And that way they can kind of get that whole idea of what am I looking for? I'm looking for something that writes and erases in a pencil. So is this one going to get a blue, a red, or a white? Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen to get back to where we were. All right. Okay, so the next one we're gonna, so that's kind of the idea of what it looks like to do that standard, meeting a standard of excellence. The next one we're gonna look at is the idea of cooperation. So in this, young people work together to allow them to examine their own skills. It lets them explore ideas beyond their own ideas. So basically, if I had this idea that this is how something should be, if I bring a whole bunch of groups of people, I'm gonna have a much broader range of ideas to come with. If you think about today's schooling, maybe not during COVID, but before COVID, how many group projects kids were being asked to do or how they're asked to work together, it really fits in to the idea of real life recognition because we're really working with teams and businesses and even in school. So where do you think cooperation is most relevant or most seen within the 4-H program, no matter where you live? Think about a place where all the kids are working together to meet a common goal. So the one that I think of that's the best example is a club. Think about your clubs. How many times are we coming up with ideas, generating ideas of where we want to do community service, what kind of recreation we want to do? The kids are all working together to make it a much broader spectrum of what that opportunity can look like. So how do we reward cooperation? Actually, I'm going to come back to that. So the positive feedback for cooperation, you see here, the ants here are working together to build a bridge. So that was one example of maybe young people are working together to build something related to 4-H, but we can give positive feedback again, host a fun event for achievement, possibly give a certificate. There's another way, there's actually some tangible awards for cooperation that the state 4-H program offers too. If you haven't seen them yet, when we're done with the training, I can go and show you where they're at, but we offer awards for young people participating as a club in community service and educational programming. And so clubs can earn up to $200 a year for the things that they're doing related to both community service cooperation and educational cooperation. So that's kind of a easy way to be able to do that. And I'll show you where that is at the end of this meeting. So the other thing you can do is 4-H skill-a-thons are great ways to encourage cooperation, and then you can reward kids for completion of a skill-a-thon. So if we go back to that Missouri 4-H website I showed you, there's actually skill-a-thons there that you can print off and set up for your 4-H clubs too, super easy. So if you're wondering what a skill-a-thon is, it's basically like a station. They're very prevalent in livestock. In fact, we have a livestock skill-a-thon and horse hippology, and a dog skill-a-thon, which actually kind of incorporate this, but you can do it for any project. One example of a skill-a-thon station I had seen at a 4-H club meeting is they were studying entomology, or the entomology group wanted to showcase some of the things they'd been learning. So they had a bunch of items like on the table, and then they had examples of what kind of a mouth an insect has. So one was a syringe, that's like a mosquito kind of mouth. One was the streamers that you blow in on the 4th of July where that goes straight out and there's a mouth where it grabs things. And so a skill-a-thon is just basically a place where kids can go and learn about something together in a group based on the materials that are provided in front of them. And if you have ever worked with the project materials that 4-H offers, the curriculum books, I'm working with a few curriculums right here at my desk. So this is the electricity curriculum, if you can see that. They actually have some skill-a-thon ideas right in those curriculums that you can add to your 4-H club meetings too. So the last one, and I think the most important one that I want to cover, is one that's really available to every single kid in the 4-H program, no matter what level they're involved in. And that's the concept of participation. So it really just recognizes kids for showing up. And sometimes it's this idea of, why do we give every kid a trophy just for being there? But I have been doing foster parenting the last 3-4 years of my life. And sometimes for some kids, that ability to show up is the only thing they can do. They don't have the ability to get involved with peer competition. They're a little too shy to start cooperation because they don't feel like they're part of the group. They may not have somebody helping them set goals. And so this really helps those kids to feel like they're part of, and even volunteers and parents, feel like they're part of the group. And for them, that helps them to want to and hopefully be able to participate in those other types of competition. So recognizing kids for just being involved is great. For some, this is a huge accomplishment that they may not that we may not understand as adults who maybe have been successful. That for some kids, just that idea of participation is huge. It really helps to build self-esteem, especially for those kids that this is their only accomplishment in 4-H. So what's something that you have seen in your county programs or at the state level where it's just basically they get recognized for participation? So one of the things I can think of is Showcase Showdown. Well, it might be very pure competition based. A young person can just come to that event and they all get a shirt when they show up. They all get a name badge when they show up. They all feel a sense of belonging through that participation. Some counties give certificates just for being in 4-H or a pin. of how many years, great Paula, how many years they've been involved. And so there's lots of different ways where we can just say, or kudos. At our 4-H club, we celebrate birthdays. And so just for being born, you get recognized for that month. And so making sure that everybody's included in whatever recognition you're doing is a great way to recognize participation. I think sometimes people wonder, why is this even part of the recognition model? Is it really that important? So I think it kind of goes back to the last slide too. What they have learned and contributed to 4-H needs to be recognized. We need to recognize them so that they feel like they belong and that we value them as a member. And it really helps to build self-esteem for those members who maybe aren't engaged, especially in that peer competition. So what does this look like? Simple things, a membership card. If your county doesn't give you membership cards, let me know. We can work with them to get those printed. You could print your own for all that matters. And some counties have them, some counties don't. It just depends, but they're available or we can make them up. A family folder. When you come to the 4-H meeting here, you get a folder, welcome to 4-H, we're glad you're here. You may just give them a certificate at the end of the year because they enrolled. Your completion pins, which we talked about, letters or notes saying, hey, we're so glad you're part of our group. T-shirts, having club shirts sounds like it's kind of silly, but having affordable club shirts that everybody can have, or in turn a way to help kids who can't afford them get those kind of shirts is great. It can be a small token of appreciation. So when my first year in 4-H, a really long time ago, my club for every new family gave us a 4-H Clover cookie cutter. And it's now been 40, not quite 40 years, it's probably been 35 years, and I still have that cookie cutter sitting in my house and show it to my kids and tell that story. And so I think simple trinkets that may not seem like a big deal can mean a lot to a kid to make them feel like they're part of it. We talked about birthday celebrations. So we get a cake every month and usually try to make it whatever the flavor of the kid that's having the birthdays likes. And then we sing happy birthday to them. You could even have somebody be in charge of sending them a birthday card. Getting leaders a name badge to make them feel like they, some of you are saying, I don't want a name badge, but how great would it be for members to see someone with a name badge that says that they're a volunteer, so that I know I can go talk to them and ask questions to them. Giving somebody a high five, like that sounds silly, but just recognizing them for being there, like, I'm so glad you came to me today, woo! No hugging because of COVID, we can give elbow bumps, whatever works. Just acknowledgement of attendance, like we're so glad we had everybody at our meeting last month, or we're so glad that Hunter and Luca came to our meeting last month. Giving them the opportunity to say the 4-H pledge or be in charge of something is a great way to recognize them. So Marquita said that they give their members a gift at the end of the year, no matter what kind of achievements they have. So they get a 4-H mug, a shirt, something for every single person, not based on competition, but based on participation, which is great. So looking for ways to do that. And some of these cost money, and maybe your club doesn't have any funds, but some of them cost absolutely nothing, like a letter, a thank you note, a high five. For the most part, membership cards are going to be free, and you can usually get those for your extension office. And if not, we can work with your extension office to find them. Acknowledgement of things that they did. Very easy way to just recognize people for participation. So that's kind of a really quick look at the recognition model, and hopefully it gave you some ways that you can think of in your club, even maybe your family or your 4-H project group, to be able to think about recognizing everybody no matter what their level of participation is. So the second part of this is about the idea of appreciation, which really goes hand in hand with recognition. And a lot of the things we talked about in recognition are very similar to appreciation. But appreciation maybe is more of the thank you than the good job. And it really helps people feel valued that they're part of the 4-H program. So let's talk about why it's important. First of all, it makes people happy. Who isn't happy to get a kudo or a gift certificate or a thank you note from somebody else or a picture of them doing great things or whatever that happens to be? It also increases cooperation and motivation to be part of the team or group. Think about yourself. How much more likely are you going to be able to get involved if your 4-H educator calls you up and says, that meeting you did was so cool, or you get a note in the mail that says, the kids loved your meeting. You're thinking, I did a great job. People are going to come to this. I'm willing to do this again. If someone doesn't say, if you're brand new or if you're kind of new and someone says nothing to you, you don't know how well you did. You don't know if people liked it. And you may just say, well, that was kind of a bust. I don't know if I want to do it again. So by getting appreciation or giving appreciation, you're much more likely to want to be motivated to help that organization. or that family or whoever it is. It also builds trust. We know then that you appreciate what I do. And in turn, I'm going to trust that when you ask me to do something, I'm probably going to be able to fulfill that request. It shows that we respect each other and helps us to gain respect. And I think this is one of my favorite quotes I found when I was doing this is appreciation is a form of currency. Think about the value of a thank you or a good job and how much it means to people. And there's zero actual dollars spent on that kind of appreciation. So it's a really easy way to be more intentional about saying thank you or this is awesome if we just do that versus having to buy a bunch of stuff for somebody. We don't need to buy our respect. We can just basically give it by doing some simple things that we'll talk about here in a second. It also may increase the engagement and creativity that members and leaders and parents bring to the table. And it helps us create a story with the future. And by that, I mean, we are terrible at member retention in 4-H. And I want to say it's because for those of us who have been in 4-H, this is my 19th year working in extension. I was a 4-H member for 10 years. And I don't do that to brag, but I do that to provide the example that because you do this for so long, it becomes ingrained in what you do. And I speak 4-H. I live 4-H. And so when something happens that nobody understands, I just assume that everybody gets it because nobody tends to question or answer or ask the questions about some of the things I just said. And so if we show appreciation, it makes other people feel like they're part of that group, they're involved, they're engaged, and they're going to retain and stay in the program versus dropping out because nobody paid attention to them that first year. My daughter goes to a pretty small school, and today a new student started, and I just got a text from her mom about how much she didn't like school because she felt like nobody engaged her to eat with them and to take her from class to class. And so it's those simple little things we can do to help members feel like and families feel like they're appreciated by just being part of our organization. So we really need to be intentional about how we do that. So who do we appreciate in 4-H? It's not just our members, it's not just our volunteers, it's members, volunteers, parents, donors that donate money, donors that donate space, donors that donate materials, your guest speakers, your cooperating businesses. I think about our last 4-H club meeting, we went bowling, and that bowling alley didn't make us pay for our shoes because we are a 4-H group. I can honestly say we haven't written them a thank you note, but how powerful would it be to thank businesses like that just for the fact that they let 4-H members come and use their facilities or they let them have a discount for things they do. So I think we need to be much more intentional about the appreciation that we give, because then we are going to see the benefits as a community and as a program and as people as we move forward. So how do we show appreciation? And these are things that may seem simple, but I think often we forget them. Say it. Say thank you. Say I appreciate you. So maybe at your next 4-H club meeting or your next 4-H event, you put in your mind that you're going to say thank you, or your kid's going to say thank you, or your family's going to say thank you to at least 3 people for something they did. Don't just say thank you because you have to meet your quota. Think about the reason. Thank you very much for being willing to say the 4-H pledge. Thank you very much for bringing the snack. Thank you very much for being my leader. I know it takes a lot of time out of your day. So super easy things to do, but things we have to be intentional about because otherwise it will never happen. And I can say that I'm terrible at this. And so for me, it's a reminder too, to be intentional as I move forward as a 4-H parent in the club that we're part of too. And as someone who works with all of the educators that provide the programs too, I need to be more intentional about thanking them for the great job that they're doing. We can also show it. How much more contagious is when you go to a 4-H meeting, if you smile and have fun, that people are going to feel like what they've done to create that experience is much more appreciated. I know when I watch my son get so excited about the different things he gets to do, it makes me know that we're in the right club and we're with the right people in order to make sure that he is having fun. And I hope the other leaders see how important that is to him. You can also use your body language. So that's kind of like smile, but you can give a high five. You can hug, but not today. Wait till things are over and we all have vaccines. You can elbow bump, you can fist bump. There's lots of things you can do that show that you're appreciative of the things that people do. One of the ones that I think gets left behind the most is write it. Write a thank you note. So maybe you can, for the next year decide that every month you're going to write a thank you note to someone in your life. It doesn't have to be 4-H related, but how often have we, because of Facebook and texting, really dropped the idea of writing notes to each other and writing thanks to each other? So think about a person in your life who, maybe you haven't heard from in a while, or maybe you see them every day, just writing them a little note that says how much you appreciate the things that they've done. You can also show appreciation by giving appreciation. Maybe you're going to create some random acts of kindness. So one day you're going to buy $20 worth of gift certificates and just go hand them out to random people who do something nice for you. The other day, some lady bought my Dairy Queen in front of me. I was totally shocked and didn't have any intention of her. I didn't even know who it was still to this day. So there's little things we could do to make people feel like appreciated about the things they do. Something easy that doesn't cost a ton of money either is you can bake something for them and take it to their house or drop it at their business to thank them for the things they've done. Or you can give something like a gift certificate or a tangible item. The one give it may cost a little bit of money, but say it, show it, and write it definitely are free for the most part, maybe a stamp or a note. So I think those are things that can be done by anybody, no matter what means you have to be able to provide those things to people. So this is a quote I found that I think really helps us to think about how much a small thank you can mean. So the smallest thank you is always worth more than the effort it takes to give it. So it's not hard to say thanks, but think about the impact you're having when you actually do that. I just wanted to cover a little bit about writing a thank you note and its importance. The other day, my kids had gotten some Christmas presents and we asked them to write a thank you note, and I realized how terrible of a job I might be doing as a parent on this. And so just some guidelines to help young people. It's 5 steps that they can think about when they write it. First, who are you thanking? Dear Mrs. Smith, dear John, dear McDonald, whatever it is, write the name of the person that you're thanking. If you can, always address it to an individual. So if you're thanking a business, try to think of who actually might be in charge or who might be reading that letter. Who's doing the thanking? Is it you? Is it your 4-H club? Is it your entire family? Be sure to include that within your thank you note. I really wanted to thank you for giving me this, or our family is really appreciative that you were able to come to our celebration and join us. Mention something noteworthy about the gift or event. And this is the one where I think my kids tend to struggle. What am I supposed to say? Well, tell about what you're using the gift for. If you got money, what did you buy with it? What are you going to save it for? Did you really enjoy it? Like here it says the flowers, you're putting them on your table, they brighten your day. So ways to just give some details about the things you got, so it's not just a generic thank you that could have been written to anybody. It's nice to remark about the thoughtfulness or the giver. I really appreciate that you're willing to donate your time to our 4-H club. You really showed that you're dedicated to helping young people, whatever it happens to be. And then just thank you again for all you've done with that upbeat, pleasant note, and look forward to working with you again, or whatever happens to be. And you can type a thank you note, but I'll let you know personally, and I think most people agree with this, a handwritten one is going to mean a lot more to somebody than a typed thank you note. But any type of thank you note is better than nothing. So if the form letter thank you note is what you've got, that's better than not sending anything at all. So I challenge you today to think about ways that your family can write thank you notes or thank people over the next year. Maybe try to do something different or the same thing every month so that we're intentional about doing it. Maybe next month we're all going to say thank you to 5 people on Friday or whatever it is. I think that the more intentional we are, the more likely it becomes a habit, and then we can make that part of our everyday lives. So I'm kind of wrapping up the ideas behind this idea of appreciation and recognition, but I wanted to give you some practical ideas that you can go start next month at your 4-H club or committee or your project or even in your family. One of the things that I don't think we do a good job of is we need to have a dedicated person who's really the thank you person. So you could elect or appoint what we called in my 4-H club a corresponding secretary or a correspondence committee. And their job is to write maybe those birthday cards, thank you notes, anything that we want them to send out to show appreciation. So that way you have at least one person in your club who once a month is writing a thank you note to somebody. One thing I suggest is as a club or as a county or whatever, get them some thank you notes, because every intention of writing thank you notes is great. But if the parents or the kid have to go out and buy the thank you notes, it's much less likely to happen than if they're given that as part of their, like a president's given a gavel, let's give the corresponding person thank you notes and stamps so they can get those sent out. Take a agenda item at your meeting to say, who do we thank this month, and give them a name and a reason why you're thanking them so that we make sure that we're intentional to write that. You could also get them a subscription to the local newspaper if your newspaper is good about covering things that young people are doing in your community. It may not work in every community, especially bigger ones, but if you have a small local newspaper. I still remember as like an 11-year-old, the dentist in my town used to cut out things that I did in the paper, laminate them, and send me congratulations. Literally my favorite dentist ever, because he took the time to actually care about me. So if you had a corresponding secretary who saw that a member made the honors roll or the dean's list, or they did something really cool, either with 4-H or without 4-H, and they had time to cut that out and send it to the person and say, really great job with this, how cool would that be, and how good does that make a person feel? And it's a pretty easy thing to do. Another thing you can do as a 4-H club is you could include recognition and appreciation in your operating guidelines, or at least put them on your agenda. When our 4-H club wrote their operating guidelines, they decided the 2 things that they wanted to do, because there's a section that says, how will you recognize members? The 2 things they wanted to do is, one is at the end of the year, every member has agreed to write a thank you note to a leader or adult that's helped them throughout the 4-H year. Super simple. So I think we'll buy some thank you notes. At one of our meetings, we'll sit down and we'll talk to the kids about what a thank you note looks like, and we'll spend that meeting writing to whoever it is that they want to write to for the year. We also put the birthday recognition into our operating guidelines to say that we will celebrate birthdays every month, depending on who it is and how many will depend what we do. So far we've made cheesecake for someone who loved cheesecake. We had an ice cream cake. We like to sing, but I think maybe we'll add in some birthday cards next month or something, but we find a way to celebrate. Another thing that I think we often overlook is that we need to find time to celebrate. Maybe spend one meeting not worrying about what the agenda looks like and how we're going to discuss everything, but spend time just having a party. Get pizza for everybody, have an ice cream sundae bar, go out and play at the park as a group. I think all too often we worry so much about that business meeting and making sure we get through the different checklists, but I can guarantee you there's going to be some value in spending one meeting a month just having a good time with the kids, whether it's bowling or, like I said, something cheap, playing at a park, hanging out at a meeting. We played bingo the other day, just something fun. And I know most clubs have money, and they're often scared or apprehensive to spend the money. Spending money on celebrating and recognizing members is a really important thing to spend it on, because we've shown that it really is going to increase our retention of members and get members more active and involved. So spend some time and some money on celebrating the great things that our kids are doing. Within your club or county, and most counties might have this, but within your club, create an awards committee. So you can figure out how to recognize everyone in your group, the parents, the members, volunteers, donors, whoever is part of your group. What are some things you can do based on the examples that I've given or other things that you've already done to recognize everybody within that group that you're doing? So another one is plan for the different recognition. So I said we need to be intentional. We're not very good at that. So plan a time a month where you're going to focus on cooperation. Maybe you're going to play games, you're going to do a skill-a-thon, you're going to do something where members work together towards a common goal. And then if it's educational or community service related, you can turn it in and you can win an award for it. Plan a time to teach young people about standard of excellence. A great time to do this might be your April or May meeting when you're prepping for fair and kids don't understand how static exhibit judging might work. So use those judging classes or make up your own judging classes to be able to do that. Find time at your meetings, maybe at least 1 or 2, where you talk about how are our goals going and are we progressing towards them. Maybe set club goals and talk about how your club goals are going, and then reward your club if you reach a milestone in a goal, then you have that party, or everybody gets to bring their favorite project material and they can do a show and tell. Give them rewards for achieving goals, whether it's personal or club related. Another thing is, if you have the opportunity to put up a bulletin board where you meet, maybe you meet at a school and they would be willing to share one with you, or you meet at the extension office and they might be willing to dedicate or put up a bulletin board for all the clubs to share. Or you can use your social media outlets like Facebook or Instagram, depending how you communicate as a group. Use those to share a job well done. So maybe one of your members did something at school, like they got good grades or something was in the newspaper, or you heard about it from a friend, put it up there. Congratulations to Lily. Today she completed the dog challenge and she now has a certified seeing eye dog. So it doesn't have to be 4-H related. It can definitely be outside of 4-H, but it's a great way for us to create that camaraderie that comes with belonging and members feeling like they're welcome by creating a way to share our successes with each other. And as parents, my guess is you're less likely to post something about your own kids because then it seems like you're bragging. Feel free to brag, brag on your kids so other people know the things they're doing, or as a parent, find out what other kids in your club are doing and share those successes so that people understand that it's important to recognize kids for the things that they're doing. So most of all, I want to say thank you to you guys. It took you time and effort to be here. And so I appreciate your willingness to want to make your club and your 4-H experience better. So I sincerely thank you for putting the time and dedication into helping young people in our program. Your 4-H educator, I'm guessing, will reiterate what I say. There is one of them, sometimes two in a county, and there are usually hundreds of kids or thousands of kids at the state level. And without our volunteers, there's zero way that we could serve those kids. We would be doing them a disservice. So we are able to survive and be successful in 4-H because we have volunteers who are willing to dedicate their time and talents to be able to help young people in our program. So a sincere thank you to all of you for being here. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to do a better job personally to be able to thank people in my life. And hopefully this inspires you to do that also. So that is the conclusion of tonight's training. I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to stop recording this also. Feel free to ask any questions you have, but I'm going to show you a couple other resources that you might be looking for that will help you to do a